Hey guys, we are going to learn about metering modes on your cameras. So what a metering mode is it is how your camera is detecting the light around your subject. So if you're shooting in manual, adjusting your metering mode really isn't going to change any of your settings because your camera's not choosing any of your settings. But if you're shooting in an auto mode or aperture priority mode or shutter priority mode, then your metering mode is going to be very important because the decisions the camera makes are going to be based on that metering. So let's first look at the Nikon camera to learn how to adjust the metering mode on the Nikon. So look at the top of the camera. It's going to have a metering mode button, which looks like this right here, which is kind of some squares filled in around the outside and a circle in the middle. That's the best way I can describe it. But if you hold that down and then use the back scroll wheel, you can choose between the metering modes in the Nikon. So this image is the matrix metering or 3D matrix metering. This is the mode your camera comes in, and this is going to be the one you want to shoot in most of the time. And what it will do is it will take the light from the entire scene, the entire frame of the image, but focus in specifically on where that focus point is pointed and add a little bit more value or make sure that that spot is metered correctly, that the light right there is right. Okay, then the other options are spot metering, which means it's going to take wherever that focus point is, and that point only is used to determine the metering settings. So that can be a good thing or that can be a bad thing. Picture a groom in a black tuxedo and imagine that the focus point is on his dark tuxedo. Well, that's going to throw off the lighting in the rest of the image because it's metering for black instead of metering for the full scene. So be careful when using spot metering because it might be tricky for you, or it might trick the camera. The next one is center weighted on a Nikon. And so what that's doing is that's taking the center of the frame, the scene, the very center of it, not the center point, but it expands out just a little bit and uses that to meter what's most important or to get the proper exposure for your image. Again, I would recommend you leave it in matrix metering, but now you know how to switch it. On a Canon, it's done the same way. You find the metering button on your camera, or you go into the Q menu. Oh, and I failed to mention on the Nikon, you might have to go into the I menu if you don't have this button. But look for this same picture and it will be inside of the I menu. Well, on Canon, you'll either look for this icon that kind of looks like a sun. It's a circle with a bracket on the top and the bottom of it. It's the best way I can describe it. But if you hold that down, you'll be able to then use the command dial to move through the metering modes available on a Canon. Now, if you don't have that icon on a button on your camera, then hitting the Q button on the back and looking for that icon, you will then be able to go into there using the multi-selector dial and changing your metering modes. Now on a Canon, the metering mode options are evaluative, which is the brackets encasing, if you will, a circle. And that is like matrix metering on a Nikon, which means it's going to take the whole scene into account when it chooses the light, but wherever that focus point is, it's going to give a little bit more value to that. So it's going to say, this is where they want to focus, so that's my subject, make sure that's lit right, but take the whole scene into account when I choose the exposure settings for this image. Now, and the other one that Canon has is the center weighted, where it will use the center of the image. It has, oops, there we go. It has spot metering, which again is that just right there, that spot where it's choosing the center spot of the image, and that is, or excuse me, not the center spot, spot metering where it's choosing where the focus point is, and it's just using that one point to choose the exposure for the full image. Or Canon has another setting called partial metering, which is basically the brackets without the center circle in the middle. And what that is good for is if you're shooting in a very backlit situation. So if the light source is behind your subject, that's when partial metering can be a good thing for you. But let's go ahead and leave it in evaluative metering, which is the bracket top and bottom and the circle in the middle, and that should give you the best metering for general purpose photography. And as you learn and as you go through this book, leave that Nikon in matrix metering and the Canon in evaluative. And then down the road, if you want to switch them, you can, because you now know how to, but this will help you as you learn. So you now know how to set the metering mode on your camera.